back to the channel. And today a tag, this is the last 10 books tag, and I don't actually know who originally put this up. I actually had this written down from like a year or so ago, so it's been a little while, but it is a good tag, so I wanted to get to it. And there are 10 prompts. The first of those is, what is the last book you didn't finish? Now, as a rule, I always finish the books I start, so I had to go back a while. I think 3 Christmases ago, I received the book as a present. Unfortunately, a couple of chapters in, I may have got a bit tipsy, too much mulled wine, and fell asleep. That book was Something Deeply Hidden, a non-fiction book by Sean Carroll around quantum theory and quantum worlds. It was dense reading when you're drinking as well, so it probably wasn't the best thing. I would like to get back to this, but my TBR is now so long. This is probably 170 or 80 books back on my TBR, so I'm not going to get to it anytime soon. Right, let's have a look. Prompt 2, the last book you reread. So I am a bit unsure on this, but I think it might be The Children of Hurin, which I got in a discussion with Patrick Leo about. He really loves this. It's his favourite book by Tolkien, and it was actually the first full novel that Tolkien wrote in the universe of Middle-earth, and it is well over 100 years old, the original manuscript for this. And it's very much reminiscent of kind of like the Greek tragedies. It is a fantastic book, and I really enjoyed my reread of that. So prompt number 3 is the last book you bought. So a book literally come in the post like yesterday, and that was a copy of Blackwater Part 2, The Levy, and these are little serialized paperbacks. You can get them as one big binder, which I see by a lot of people, but I'm trying to track these all down in reasonable condition for a reasonable price. That is very difficult, I can tell you now. But yeah, this came in a post like literally yesterday or something, so that is certainly the last book I brought. The last book you said you read but didn't. I don't understand this question, if I'm being honest. I don't know if people are in the habit of saying they've read books that they haven't, or if this is really for audiobook readers. But I don't do a lot of audiobooks. I used to, you know, like a teen, you know, rent them from the library and things like that. But that was a long time ago. And yeah, I haven't read a lot of audiobooks or listened to a lot of audiobooks recently. So I don't know what the answer to that one is really. Prompt number 5 is, what's the last book you wrote in the margins of? Now, I definitely do not write in the margins of my books. If I wanted to write notes on a book, I would put it in a separate notepad or on maybe my phone or a laptop. But the last book would have been a play by Shakespeare, no doubt. It probably would have been Hamlet or Macbeth. I'm just going to hold up the complete works of Shakespeare here as a placeholder for one of those plays. Right, prompt number 6 is the last book you had signed. I've never had a book signed, though I was very happy to receive a signed copy of Return to Edan. I had actually purchased this and reviewed it, but Philip Chase, who I have had many good conversations with now over email and online, and he was kind enough to send me a signed copy of Return to Edan. I wanted to hold this one up mostly because it's the best book in that series, and I believe one of the best books of last year. It's a shame when that happens and it's the 3rd book in a trilogy, because less people get to experience it. All I would say is if you enjoyed the first 2 books in any way, you really owe it to yourself to get to Return to Edan. It is by far the best book in the trilogy, and really one of the best books of last year. Another book I wanted to show was a book that I picked up signed, which was Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And I picked this up for less than £4 signed, but I didn't get it signed. I just found it in a bookstore as a signed edition. Right, the next prompt is number 7, the last book you lost. Well, I actually had a couple of books down for this, but I couldn't actually find the new copies I replaced them with. So I'm actually going to just use this as an excuse to bring out this lovely edition of 1984 by George Orwell, because I did own a paperback copy back in the day, and it did go missing during moving house, as most of these books tend to. I think the other 2 books on this that I was going to use as examples also went missing when I moved house. Right, number 8, the last book you had to replace. So this could have been any of 2 books. The 2 most recent ones to my memory were, I had a really beat up, torn up copy of The Stand. The spine and the binding had all come apart, and I had to replace that with a different copy. And the same thing happened, well, it's a different issue. I think I got a mold issue. I didn't notice that there was mold on a secondhand copy that I had of this book, Emperor of Thorns, and there had been some mold in the binding, and it actually spread out onto the pages. And I hadn't noticed when I purchased it, so I actually did give that book away and then got a new copy because I wanted the series to look nice and neat on my shelf. Right, prompt number 9 is a spicy one. What's the last book you had an argument over? Now, you don't have to go far online these days to have an argument around whether or not a book is overhyped or overappreciated. And certainly I find that a lot with this, The Lord of the Rings. I just wanted an excuse to hold up this lovely illustrator, author illustrated edition that I still have wrapped. I probably have too many copies of Lord of the Rings, and I will always go to bat and defend Lord of the Rings, and I have to quite often online because not a lot of people like it these days apparently, and I'm not quite sure why, because I believe it is a masterpiece. So prompt number 10 is the last book you couldn't get hold of. Now there was an incident that happened back in the 80s in the UK where it was effectively some people call it a haunting, some people will call it a like trans-dimensional experience that someone had through their home computer. And it's a book called The Vertical Plane that was made into a documentary. It was released as a paperback and has been very, very hard to find. The first edition paperback, it was limited, very limited release, goes for £300 to £500 in good condition. But luckily, about 2 years ago, they did a second edition reprint. And here, I've got a copy of it here, The Vertical Plane. It's really interesting, the second edition, because they've added photos and kind of evidence and stuff of the investigation to the book. They've put a lot of real work into this to make this feel different. Yeah, it's not the greatest, I don't think, necessarily printing quality, but I really like all the little bells and whistles, and it is an almost impossible book to find, first edition of for any real kind of price. So I'm really glad they reprinted this. I hope at some point a lot of these really hard to find books get themselves a kind of second printing. These books, when they only ever got one printing, it makes it really difficult to track them down and experience them. So that is my 10 prompts, and I want to tag a few people. First, I want to tag Percy Does Everything. She's a really eclectic booktuber, one that I really enjoy. It's really, really high energy. And I can't remember the last time I tagged her. I don't do a lot of tags, but I think I haven't tagged her for a few months, so I tag her. The other one is Gal Reads Books. I haven't seen him on Booktube for like a month or two, so I'm hoping he hasn't quit. So I'm hoping if I tag him, he will come back and do some content for us. And finally, Farah at Bookstalgic, because yeah, it's a channel I've been really watching more and more of recently, and I don't think I've ever tagged her in any one of these tags before. So those are the 3 people I'm tagging for this tag. And if you enjoyed this tag, please, please do it as well, because it's impossible to tag everyone that you watch, especially if you're watching as many booktubers as me.